In the coming 20 minutes, we're going to show you how you can build Microsoft Graph Connect the easy way with Teams Toolkit. Basically, TLDR, press F5 and it just works. It's got to be that simple. So that's what you will learn in the coming 20 minutes or so. First things first, though. Why connectors? What are they? Why would you care? Like, we all know, right, that in our work, we use many different apps. We have apps for support tickets, HR systems, whatever systems, contract systems. And while all these apps help us do our work, challenge is that you need to know what content is stored where and how to access all these apps. You need bookmarks, you need different apps to go there, and so forth and so on. Why not be able, imagine, right, that you can find all the content from all these different apps from one single place, being Microsoft 365. Right, so that is kind of the value add of using a connector. With Microsoft Graph connectors, you can find the content in your org from one single place, being Microsoft 365, no matter where it's stored. So no longer you need to worry about which app, who put it there, and so forth and so on. All of that is available to you right from the fingertips. And what's really cool about it is that you can not only find the content that you need, but you can also find out about new content, right? So folks with whom you work, if they work on the content that's important to you, like a contract or project plan or whatever, you will discover that too, right? So there's also a benefit for you to be able to find out more about what people around you are working on. So what is a connector? A high-level overview is exactly that, right? There are connectors that are available out of the box. You just get to use them, set them up, and they work. But if you have a need, if you need to connect to a system that isn't available out of the box, you can build your own. And when you build your own, when we talk about that, it's basically a piece of code that will connect to the system from which you want to import the content. And then it will use Entra ID, AAD in the past, to authenticate towards Microsoft 365, and will use the Microsoft Graph APIs to ingest the content to Microsoft 365. So it's really as simple as what you're seeing on the screen, and it can be as simple as a PowerShell script. It can be as elaborate as a fully fledged cloud app with scale-out serverless queues, Kubernetes, whatever you want, depending on the requirements that you've got, the scale you need to handle, right? So keep that in mind. It can be really simple or it can be really elaborate, all depending, again, on what you need. Now, if you build a connector by itself, it's just a cloud app. It's just a piece of code. There is nothing to it. But you also have this one cool ability, which is to deploy a connector as a Teams app. Now, why would you do that? Two reasons. One is it gives you a fully automated deployment. Like you don't need to give somebody a PowerShell script or a document to set things up. Because when you think about a connector, before it can ingest the content from your external system, it needs to create a connection and a schema, right? So you need to have that initial set up first. And again, like you can do it from your code, but somebody needs to start that code. If you use a Teams app to deploy a connector, you will get a UI for that. And that is also the benefit too, right? That admins get a control that is a standardized UI that they already know to turn connectors on and off. And that is really great because you don't need to build something by yourself, so it saves you time. And again, it makes it easier to use them because admins already know how these things work. So it's easier. It's made to make things easier. Right? So if you choose to build a connector and to package it as a Teams app, how things change. Now, obviously, we evolved the picture a little bit, right? So on the right-hand side, you see things like connector storage, external content, and so forth and so on. So that is kind of targeting more a connector that would evolve as a cloud app, right? So imagine that you have a connector that runs in a cloud, and you want to have that deployed as a Teams app. On the left-hand side, what you see is a package, right? And that is a Teams app package that you deploy to the Teams admin center. Once it's there, the admin will enable a connector using a toggle, and that sends signal to your app, which then to your code, which then means like, hey, now it's time to set things up and start ingesting the content using the Microsoft Graph. So there are a few additional bits that you need to do. From the dev point of view, there are three things you need to add. You need to have obviously a Teams app because you're going to package connector as a Teams app. In the manifest of the app, you need to have a URL of the webhook where Teams Admin Center will reach out to say admin has turned the connector on or off. So that URL needs to be embedded in there. And in your code, you need to have an API to receive the webhook. So again, when admins choose to turn that connector on or off, your code will run and it will get the signal saying clean everything up or set everything up. So that is what you need in production. In dev, for that to work, you can imagine that you will probably need some more things, right? Because like you need to have a URL that will be called from Teams Admin Center, right? So if you're doing local dev, how will Teams Admin Center, which is in a cloud, reach out to your local box? Well, you will need a tunnel. You will need to expose the local API that you run on the internet. Right, so we have a product for that, which are dev tunnels, which allow you to do that. Right, so you need to start that. Now, every single time you start a tunnel, it will get new URL. So that URL needs to go into the Teams app manifest, which then needs to go into the package, which you need to redeploy to the Teams Admin Center. Right, so for the dev, ideally, you want to automate all of this. You don't need to, like, every single time you press F5, oh yeah, now I need to change this and then change that, adjust the URL, repackage the thing, update the version, update the package. You don't want to do all of that by hand because it's inefficient, it's slow, it distracts you from your main work being building the connector. And the cool thing is that now you're about to see how you can automate all of that because Teams Toolkit allows you to do exactly that. So with that, I'm handing it over to Garry, who's going to walk you step by step through how all of this exactly works.
Thanks, Waldek. Hopefully everyone should be able to see my screen.
Yep, it's
all
on.
Good, and you can hear me even better. Right, okay, I'll take it away. So thanks, Waldek. So in front of you now, you've got Visual Studio Code, and I am showing you a sample that is available for you to go and take a look at. We'll give you the link after I've just walked you through what it does and why you'd want to take a look at it. So this is a sample that, as Waldek has just mentioned, automates all the moving pieces that you need to think about when developing a graph connector and ingesting data into Microsoft 365. So this sample effectively ingests data from a custom API into Microsoft 365 and does all of the handling of uploading Teams app packages, and everything else for you. So I'm just going to show you now the result of running this project. So we talked about the app, the Teams app that gets deployed so that admins can turn on or off the connection. So we have our Teams app here. We have our graph connector, and we can see that we have our connection status here so that the connection is ready. The admin can come along, they can tick this button, they can turn it off, turn it back on. This sample also sets up a data source in Microsoft Search. So if we come into the portal in here, we can see, go to data sources, just refresh that, there we are. So we have our Foodsy local data source, and we have data ingested into here as well. If I just open this up, you can see we've got 50 items indexed. And another thing which this sample also does for you is it adds in a custom result type as well, so that when the search results are returned, they're using our own custom type. So I can show you this running if I go to Microsoft365.com, type in chocolate. There we have our results. We have some blank results, but we do have some results in there. We can click on that and it goes to our external API where we got the data from. Okay, so that's the end result of running this sample. Let's take a look at what happens when you come to run it. So we've made this incredibly simple for you. All you have to do is hit F5 and everything happens magically. Well, not magically, because I'm going to show you actually how all how all this works. So as Waldek mentioned, we're using Teams Toolkit to provide a lot of this automation. Teams Toolkit is the Visual Studio Code extension, so you can get that from the marketplace and install it. And this is designed for building Teams apps and Teams apps fast. Now there is no template for building a graph connector. So what we did was we started with just an Azure Functions project, normal Azure Functions project, and then we added in all of the automation from Teams Toolkit by adding in a number of files. Those files being these files down here. So we have our YAML files, our project files, we have our environment files, we have our app package from our manifest as well. And the last folder we have is our VS Code folder, which includes a lot of our automation tasks. We've also got all of our Azure Function code in this source directory. So this is using the new Azure Functions, the V4 programming model as well. So what happens when you come along and press F5? So what happens is we have this configuration in here. So this is our starting point. And if I open up the debug panel, you can see that we have this compound called debug. And this runs a pre-launch task, which is here called TTK. And it also runs a configuration as well, which it will run last. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this pre-launch task, and that is held within a task.json file. And in here, this is where we've got all of our tasks that are going to run in the background, things like npm install, ensuring some environment files, ensuring a dev tunnel as well, which Waldek had mentioned. We need a dev tunnel running. We're going to start an Azurite emulator. So this project actually uses emulated Azure storage. So we use tables and we use queues as well to help with the setup of the connector. And we also have a provision stage. So this provision stage is quite important because this is where Teams Toolkit really comes in. So if I go all the way down to our provision task, which is here, we can see that we have a type of Teams FX task, which is running the provision command. Now that relates to our Teams app YAML.local file. And in here, we have a few scripts that we're running to set up our custom API. So we've got a storage a table that has data in there that we're exposing an API that the connector is calling to then ingest that data into M365. We also have another script which increments the manifest version because we're going to be publishing this to the admin center. We want to make sure that we're incrementing that version so it doesn't get blocked because the admin center doesn't like it if you upload the same app manifest with the same version number. But here's where we start to deploy things that the connector needs. So the first one here is our AAD create app. AAD app create task. So this creates an Azure AD app registration, creates the secret, and pulls back a lot of the IDs that we need, the client secrets, into our environment files. And this is defined in the AAD manifest file. So in here, if you ever looked at a manifest file for an Azure AD or Microsoft Entra ID app registration, you'll see that we have some scopes in here for Microsoft Graph. So these are application permissions for external connections, read write owned by, and external item read write owned by, which is obviously going to enable us to create the connections and then ingest that data into Microsoft 365. Okay, let's go back to our YAML file. We then do some validations of our manifests. We also use this task here, which is the create or update JSON file. And now this is taking out the IDs that we've got back from the task that has created our Azure AD app registrations, and we're dropping these into the local settings JSON file, which is used by the Azure function. So these are the runtime environment variables. And in here is where we define all of the variables that are needed when this Azure function runs. And then finally, we update we publish the app package to the Teams admin center, because at this point, everything is ready. Our app package is all good. If we look at the app package, there's one crucial piece of information in here, and this is the graph connector. So this is where, when this is deployed to the Teams admin center, we're telling Teams, hey, this is the notification URL, and this is where the notification is going to be sent when our administrator enables or disables that connector in the admin center. Obviously, because this could change, our tunnel could change. We want this to update every time we do F5 potentially as well. So this is using Teams Toolkit placeholders in here, and we have a generated manifest here with all of the values. So we can see this is our tunnel URL that's being used in here. Visual Studio Code has decided to, has decided to go a little bit slow, but you can see here what the actual manifest looks like, and here's the app package that is actually uploaded. Okay, so the final piece is, if we go back to our tasks, if we go back to launch, is the final thing after we've uploaded the app package to Teams Admin Center. We then start Azure Functions. This host start task is called Azure Functions spin up, and then we're ready. We've got everything provisioned. We've got everything running on our machine, so that when we hit that enable toggle, the notification comes to our endpoint, which is in here. So if we go to the HTTP notification, so we can see that we're going to receive a post request. And what we do in here is we just detect, okay, what's the action? Are we creating or are we deleting? And we drop a message into a queue. And we have a queue connection in here, which when the message is received, which is all defined in here, the message with the action for creating or deleting or even checking the status, we will then go and create the connection, which is here. So we'll call Microsoft Graph and create the connection. Once that is done, we will then create the schema. Again, we're calling Microsoft Graph here, and at this point, the schema creation can take a while. It's kind of like go for a coffee time. So what we do is we actually drop a message into the queue as well with the status, and we keep checking. So if we look at the enqueue check status, we basically set a timeout of checking like every 60 seconds, but this is just running in the background. It's just dropping messages into the queue. It's just checking. And when the connection comes back as being completed, so we have this check schema status in here, we start a full crawl. So here we again send a message to another queue, which is queue content, which helps us then define, okay, what crawl are we doing? In this case, we haven't got any data, so we're going to do a full crawl. So we have this function called crawl full or incremental. And in here, this is where we send a message to our backend API, which is called products. And that's defined in this file here, which, standard API definition. So we have things for delete product, update product, get product, and so on. VS Code is running a little bit slow again. Not sure why that is. Oh, Windows not. Oh, there we go. It's come back to life again. Where was I? Yeah, so this is where we have our products defined. So we've got get product and we have get products as well. So what we do here is we essentially then push the products into 365, and at the end of all of this, we'll then end up with the data source, which is full of items. But the key thing here is Teams Toolkit is doing a lot of the hard work for you. If we have a look at the terminal, you can see the processes that we have running. So this is already running. We have our Azurite emulator here. We have our dev tunnel. We have the usual watches. So as we're developing, you make changes to your Azure function, they get recompiled, and we've got our host, our Azure function host that is running here with. We've got some output already. In the we also have timer functions in here as well. So we have a timer function which is running the crawls on a schedule as well. And we also have the ability for you to start an on-demand crawl as well by just sending a HTTP request. But this is just running in the background. It's checking, see if things exist or whether they need updating or whether we had new data in our API that then we can push into M365 as well. Now, because this is running locally using the storage, you can actually view the queues. If you use Microsoft Azure Storage Explorer, you can look in here, have a look at the queues. There's nothing in them, so we've not got anything in there. But you can see the kind of like our backend database, which backs our API, and you can also see the external items which have been ingested into 365 as well. So we keep a copy of what has been ingested, so that we can do that sync and make sure that we're refreshing data in there. And with that, I believe that is it. Waldek, do you want to close up with the slide?
Totally. Let me share one more thing, because there are folks who ask about one important thing. Is this sample available online? Yes, it is. It's available online at the URL you're seeing on the screen, aka.ms/gc for graph connectors /samples /TDK-VSC, Teams Toolkit VS Code. So you can go there, you will grab sample, you have all of the code. If you are stuck anywhere, like we've got instructions, we even get to the point where we've got the diagrams for you explain, like we have sequence diagrams explaining the different flows, architecture diagrams explaining how different things fit. So we really try to make it, as extensive, as complete as we can, and also as close to prod as you can. So you've seen queues, you've seen tables, you've seen all that. So all meant towards the goal of giving you a reference point that you would reasonably use as a starting point to build something real. So with that, check it out and let us know if it's working, if it's not working, if it's stuck, if you missed something, or everything's fine and you enjoy it. Perfectly fine. We'd love to hear it too. So with that, thank you again for your time. If there is anything, do reach out to us.